We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Bob Sandheinrich. This is Bernat Espigule. So we're going to be doing a workshop demonstration of data drop, and specifically Bernat's going to be showing how we can use it with if this then that. So data drop is Wolfram's cloud-based data aggregator service. It's been we've been out for almost a year now with it live, and you know, there's been a lot of people using it. If you saw Evan over there give a nice talk yesterday for a nice application of data drop with political data and social media. It was pretty interesting. There are a couple other people I think that are using data drop as small parts of their talks. So it's starting to work its way into this community and sort of the Wolfram world. For those of you who might not be so familiar, I'm going to do a quick overview of what data drop is. Then I'm going to show you how you can get started using data drop, show you the web interface. So we have a data drop website, and then show you how you can use data drop from within the Wolfram language, whether that's Mathematica or the cloud or Wolfram desktop. And then I'm going to do a couple of quick examples before I hand off to Bernat. So for the first few minutes, there's not going to be a couple. You know, I'm just going to be talking. But then you can feel free to try to follow along when I'm on the website. When I get into the language, I sort of have the input cells already written out, so I wouldn't necessarily try to follow along, just sort of watch. And then Bernat's examples might be easier if you want to try to do things along with us. So, like I said, the data drop is a service for aggregating data, but it doesn't just aggregate data. It also standardizes it and gets it into WDF. So you know, you can get all of your entities as entities. You can get dates as dates. You can get geolocations as Wolfram geolocations. You can get quantities as physical quantity objects. You know, it standardizes it into the format that allows you to do all of our great analysis with it. And we've tried to set up data drop so that anything can send us data. So you can have anything with an HTTP connection can make a request to our API and add data to a data bin. You can do it from a web form, which we make it super easy to deploy a web form, which you can use directly or you can embed in your site. You can do it from the language. There's lots of ways. You can tweet us data. You can send us data in email. You can use IFT, which Bernat's going to show, which is a super cool way to, you know, add by a factor of 10 the number of things that can add data to data drop. A couple things to make note of. This is a service that lives in the Wolfram cloud. Essentially, anybody with a cloud account could make their own data drop. This is not something that we have special abilities to do. This is a service written mostly in the Wolfram language, living in our cloud, that we thought would be a great service, so we made it. And it's also integrated fully into the language, so we'll see that in a minute. So the fundamental unit of data drop is the data bin. Any person can have multiple data bins, and a data bin can have multiple users. They're defined by unique IDs. They have both a long UUID and a short ID. You can set permissions on your data bins, and you can define semantics for interpretation, which I definitely encourage people to do. It's what makes us special, I think, as far as places to send data. So as I said, you can add data from lots of different sources. Forums, Twitter, web forums. I guess I've already gone over this. Just a quick example. Here's a data bin I have, and I'll show you in a minute exactly what this ugly, stupid data is and how it was made. So once you have a data bin, you can use that data bin in the language just as a normal object. So date list plot, which is a function probably most of you are familiar with. It can work with lists, but it can also work directly on a data bin, which is always time series data. So since it's time series data, things that work with time series objects generally work with data bins. So that means you can access it from all these, all of our systems, Mathematica, Programming Cloud. And we also have Wolfram Alpha summaries, which I will also show in a minute. So the first interface I'm going to show is the data drop website. So yeah, you guys can see that pretty well, right? So this is the home page. It has some blurbs about what we can do, telling you how great data drop is. There's also this quick reference, which I encourage, if you're interested in data drop, I highly encourage you to look at this. I'm not going to go through it. We don't have nearly enough time. But this is sort of the main documentation for using data drop. So you can see I'm logged in here. And I can create a data bin easily just by pressing the Create a New Data Bin button. And this will give me a new data bin. You can see I have this ID here. That's the short ID. And up in the URL, you can see the full ID for the bin. You can do anything you want. You can name it. You can set permissions on the data bin. I'm not going to mess with it right now because if somebody wants to frantically copy this ID into their session, they feel free to add data to this bin as we go along. You can add entries to the data bin. So this is using the standard Wolfram form function. It's just embedding it in an iframe on this website. I can add an entry. I can add another entry if I want. So now we've created a data bin, and I'm going to take this ID. I'm just going to copy it. Let's see. Should we look? This isn't going to be a particularly interesting data bin to look at in Wolfram Alpha, but from there you can view data in your data bin in Wolfram Alpha. And this was just a couple of text entries, which won't be very interesting. Oh, what happened here? Uh-oh. Well, something failed there. Okay, we'll have to fix that. So once you have this bin ID, you can use this data bin from anywhere. Oops, that's the wrong one. What am I doing? So I can take that bin ID and put it right into the Wolfram language and access that same data bin. I can see the entries I've made. I can add new entries. So once you have a data bin, any interface with the Wolfram language can access it and use it from multiple places. So I said that data bin with the stupid data that I had earlier I was going to show you how I made it. So basically, I just created this data bin as I was creating this notebook. I evaluated this set options cell, which basically says anytime I hit a digit key on my keyboard while I was making this notebook, it added that value to a data bin. So you can create data bins for lots of little tracking things that you want to do. So this is something simple that just sort of happens as I go along, and we can look at sort of the metadata of this data bin using options. Yeah. So if I'm in this notebook, yeah. So I'm setting the options of evaluation notebook. So anything I do in this notebook until I quit the kernel or change that option, it will do that. So if I click into a different notebook or into a browser or something, that won't work anymore. So if we look at the options, it sort of shows the metadata. And I created this interpreter, which is the data semantics that I mentioned earlier. So this is expecting integers. But this interpretation can be much more interesting things, which we'll show in a second. So Now that I have the data from that data bin, like I said earlier, all of the functions that work on time series or work on lists of data will pretty much work directly on the data bin itself. So each time I do one of these things, it's going out and checking if there's been any new data added to the data bin on the cloud. And if not, since I'm not adding new data, it's sort of showing the same thing. I can also, as I mentioned earlier, am I not authenticated? So some things require, so this data bin, I think I made it private for adding data. Anybody can read data from it, but only I'm allowed to write to it. So since I wasn't cloud connected, it wasn't going to let me create a web form for adding data. But now that I'm authenticated, I can create a web form. So this is a web form in our cloud. I can use this right here. I could embed it in my own website. And so now you should see we should have a 32 on the end of this thing. There we go. All right, so that's just super basic examples. Now we're going to show one with a little bit more interesting interpretation. So I'm going to create a data bin that's looking for 4 values, and you'll have to bear with me. I created this example for when I was giving a similar presentation, which was online, and I could send people a link. So either we can just use the data from that one, or if anybody wants to try to copy the ID into their notebook, we can do that. But if I define these fields, so I'm looking for a quantity in years, I'm looking for a country, I'm looking for an animal, and I'm looking for a number. So I can create a data bin that's looking for those values. And when I deploy the web form, do that update? Yeah, there we go. So this is our smart forms. So I can fill it out. Favorite animal. Let's say a lion. How about 8 years? All right. So the idea here is I can take this web form and let you all see it. We can do URL shorten, and it might not be as crazy. So if anybody wants to tell me where they're from and their favorite animal, they can use this short URL, and then they'll be able to add data. But in the interest of expediency, and I don't think we'll get more than a handful, we'll use the bin from a previous example, from when I did this before. Let's see. Where is that one? We'll copy this bin. This one has 110 results in it, so it'll be more interesting. So you can see when I gave this online, we had more diverse countries. Although we're pretty diverse here, so maybe. So once I have the data in my session, once I've brought it in from the data bin, I have all of the wonderful tools in the language for working with geolocations and doing all sorts of neat stuff. So I can find all the capitals. I can plot paths from, typo there. I can plot the geopaths from where we are to where all of these capitals are for everybody that attended the talk previously. We'll pretend like it's you guys. And so when I looked at this before, I asked for the values of the data bin. So that sort of sorts them all, and each field is sort of sorted as a list. I can also ask for the entries, and that'll be sort of like the transpose of that, where each, it's a list of each entry. So when I look at it this way, it's easier to sort of draw correlations between different fields. So if I just get one person from each country, I can do a neat little, this one takes a minute, or I can pull in a favorite animal from each country and plot it on the map, which is sort of trivial, but I don't know of any other systems that can really do that so quickly and easily. Let's see, are we still running? Well, we'll come back. And a little more interesting, we can create a data set from the data bin. We've probably seen a lot of data sets and talks already. This is a version 10 or 10.1 edition, I think. But it allows you to, oh, there's my Geographics. Let's make that bigger. It's more interesting. All right. Oh. All right, so some of the images get distorted, but there's the idea. So more useful is creating a data set from the data bin. So when I create a data set, it gives me all the data along with the timestamps in the data bin. And you can query this data in the language. I can look up all the people who filled out the form that are older than Wolfram research using this date difference and select. So this is select acting as an operator, which is something that I think was new in 10.1 also. Once I have that result, I guess this is slow to looking up our founding date. The rest of it should probably be pretty fast. Well, we'll go ahead and evaluate those. So once I've done that, I can get an image of the favorite animal of each of the people that's older than Wolfram research, because that's what everybody was wondering. So this is just sort of a, there's our people older than Wolfram. So that's a basic demo of how to get started with data drop, how to create data bins, how to use the web interface, how to take a data bin from the web interface, bring it into the language, access it in the language, and shows how you can seamlessly get the data that you put in your data bin and start doing analysis and computation. So I'm going to let Bernat take over here.
Thank you, Bob, for this nice introduction to data drop. So my name is Bernat Espigule, and today I'm going to talk about the if this then that service. It's an external service that Wolfram now it provides a channel where you can connect to the different channels that are available to this platform. But I'm going to talk about this platform and this particular channel, the Wolfram data drop, in the if this then that. And then I'm going to go through the different types of recipes that you can create. These are do recipes and if recipes. And then I'm going to show two examples that you can use data drop with other devices, for example, Arduino and the Raspberry Pi. And then I'm going to just go through the function semantic import and data bin upload. It's some advanced functions that you can use to get your local data from your desktop or whatever you have it and send it to the cloud. Wolfram data drop. Let me enlarge this. So if this then that is an external platform, I encourage you to download these free apps that they have. These are the do button, the do camera, and the do note, and then you have also the if app. And I'm going to explain how to use that using the Wolfram data drop channel. There are like hundreds of different channels in there, so I could just give you an overview of what's available. So it really increases exponentially the different sources that you can get for data drop. And you can get really creative about what you want to connect with. So that there is like connected home, the different services. I'm going to go through this one later as an example. Then that mobile station. But you have a Fitbit. We can see here some services that are already integrated to the Wolfram language. But it's, as you're going to see, it opens more possibilities to have the Wolfram data drop channel in this kind of galaxy of different apps and services. So I encourage you to download the apps and log in, sign up to this service. So you're going to be able to connect your Wolfram data drop account to if this then that, and create your own recipes. So the do recipes are single buttons, so that it's going to be available in your smartphone or mobile device. So it's just with one tab, you are going to send data to your data drop, a specific data bin that you have. And then you have the if recipes that are composed by a trigger, and then there is an action. The action is going to be, in this case, to save the data to data bin. Yeah. So let's look at the do apps. For example, the do button app, an example that I have here is, well, first of all, you must create a data bin. Well, let me start with the if this then that. So I'm just going to go to if this then that, the service. Oh, it's not connected. So I go to my recipes. And here in my recipes, you have the if recipes and the do recipes. The do recipes, it's better to create them when you are in your mobile device. So you open the app and you can create your own recipes. But for the if recipes, it's better. I find it more useful to open them and create them through the web platform that they offer. So you select the trigger channel. In this case, I'm going to select Instagram. And then you have to specify the type of trigger that you want. In this case, I'm going to choose this one. So whenever a photo is sent to Instagram and it's public, I'm going to select the area. In this case, is where we are having the conference. So I'm just going to capture all the Instagram photos sent in this area where the Wolfram Technology Conference is happening. So it's like here. So I create the trigger, and then I specify the action. In this case, is the Wolfram data drop channel. So I select to add an entry to the data bin. So here I have to deploy the ID of the data bin. So for this case, I'm going to go here and create a data bin. So once I have this new data bin, I just have to take the short ID, copy it, and paste it in this field. Yeah. Then you have to add the ingredients, the data that you want to add to this specific data bin. For Instagram, you have different types of ingredients that you can add, and one of those is the caption, for example. So I'm just going to add the caption, but I'm going to specify the key. The name of the key is going to be caption equals, and then I can add other ingredients just by adding an and. So for example, I can add the URL. So I say URL is equal to the source URL that this is going to be providing the image that we're going to be able to import to Mathematica later. So I could be adding more ingredients. In this case, I'm just going to have only the caption and the URL of the image. So I ended up with create action. And then I can check and select to receive notifications of when this recipe is running, then I'm going to receive a notification to my mobile device. So now I'm looking just for some volunteers that I want to take a selfie and send it to Instagram. No, just kidding. But so here it is. I just created a recipe. It's that simple. So the do recipes are even simpler. So you just have to deploy also the ID of the data bin that you want to send the data. And for example, this case, I'm taking the latitude and longitude of my mobile device in this field. So whenever in this case, I must say that I created a data bin using the function built in. So I have this interpretation going on. So the geo is going to interpret as a location. So when I am sending the latitude and longitude numbers, they're going to be interpreted as a geo position. So I can show you an example that I'm just going to tap from this tablet. So I'm going to save it to the bin. So now I have the location of this room. And for example, in this case, I was taking the last two values, and I live in Barcelona, so I just had these two values. One was up to a hill, and the other one was at home. So I could measure the distance, or measure the altitude of this hill in respect to my home, and several other things. But I'm going to try to run it and see if I'm detecting another location. Because I was logging the location at my hotel, and now we're going to have the location of this room as well. But I'm not sure if it's going to work. The internet connection it's faulty for me. Okay, let's skip that. So you can do the same thing for the Do Camera app. Could be saving the location and the photo as well. So for example, here I just was taking some photos using this app, and then you can visualize them in the map. The same for Do Note. You can save it whatever you want as your values. It just was measuring the mood. But you can find your own applications of it. It's open to you. Here is another example. I created 8 different recipes that were taking the Instagram channel but they were taking images from different locations, different zoos in the world. This is one of the largest ones. So I set up these different recipes that were sending data to the same data bin. So I had this this is the data bin. I had all the information available in there. So here is just a representation of the 30 images. And then I used the image identify to filter out only the images about the animals. In this case, I was able to find what kind of animals were photographed by the visitors. And it's quite impressive that they work quite well. Yeah. And this was only just one day, but you can analyze the whole data. It has been running for several days. So. It's not a real one, but yeah. And then I can take, for example, also the captions of these Instagram photos. And I can tell the language that was spoken by the visitors when they were sending these photos. You can also create the hashtag cloud, the word cloud of the hashtags of these images, or analyze the sentiment of these posts. Most of them are positives. And using the Facebook topic built-in analyzer, you can see that most of these posts are about the pets and animals, and family and friends. So that's neat to see that these locations in the hairs are representing these kind of topics, and you will have the tools to interpret that. Okay, here is another example. I created this recipe to collect the text from Pinterest. So I use this to collect Twitter programs that we are creating in this Pinterest page. So here you have all these Twitter programs that has been selected from the ones that you are sending, users are sending. So when I just click that I liked one of those, I'm going to save the text to the data bin. So I'm able to take the code that I want from this collection and then analyze it later. Here I'm just taking the last value of this data bin, and it's giving me the expression and the code, so I can just explore it in a notebook. So it's an easy way to go through it and have this service, the Pinterest, working for you. Finally, there is another example. That's the LittleBit from LittleBits. I have the sample here, so I can just throw it. You can check it out. It's just LittleBits is a platform aimed for kids to explore computation and electronics. So you have different models and different sensors. In this case, I'm just using a sound trigger. So with this, I'm able to send data to data drop when it triggers using the this and out. Yeah. So I place this trigger next to the home telephone that I have at home. So whenever it's ringing, it's going to be saving an entry to this data bin. So here just the data from August through October. You have many other channels that you can use. For example, the location from Android and iOS, it's available there. So you can set it up to trigger different things when you exit home, for example, or enter home. You can use the Fitbit, Twitter, the UVI index also, it's available there. Newspapers, there are a few of them, New York Times, The Times. And here is the Netatmo weather station that I have at home. So I created a recipe to log values when the sound level rises or drops below a certain threshold. In this case, it's 50 decibels. So when this happens, then I'm sending the data to data drop. So you can notice here that I created the data bin using this interpretation, that I want the noise to interpret it as decibels. So all these values then are going to be with the corresponding units, the physical units that you have. Another point about the data drop is that it allows you to analyze this data directly through Wolfram Alpha. So even if you don't know about analyzing data in the Wolfram language or the Mathematica platform, then you can use Wolfram Alpha to analyze it and have some insights about what is going on. So this the noises date is on Thursday. Now I'm going to show that you can also, was using the if this and that, but now I'm just going to go directly to the website of Netatmo, and there you can download from the cloud, their own cloud, the data that you have been collecting with your station, your weather station. And here I'm just selecting these all the values from September. So I just imported them as a CSV file. So I used semantic import to import all the values of this file. So it was using all these properties to interpret correctly the different physical units. And I ended up with this data set. And once I had this data set, I did different analysis. For example, here I was analyzing the average day I have. This is the CO2 emissions, the particles per million. But during night, it rises up. And then during the day, it's quite low when I have the windows open or whatever it's going on. And the noise is different here. The noise is low when we are sleeping, and then it rises up during the day. So the thing that I found useful is to use data bin upload. And in this case, you can see that I'm just taking smaller chunks of the data and sending that to Datadrop, because there is a limit. So you have to be careful about the size of your data set that you want to send to Datadrop. The only thing important is that if you want the timestamps to be interpreted correctly, you have to set them with the name timestamp, in the sense that the values, the key name, it must be timestamp with a capital T. Oh, yeah, sorry, it's just a small detail. So, yeah. So now next is just an example that Arnold did with Arduino Yun. He built up his own weather station. So you're going to find this post available in community Wolfram, or the Wolfram blog was also featuring this nice example. So when you send this code to the Arduino, you can see that here is just going to be adding the temperature using the API of Datadrop. It's just you have to change it with your ID, your data bin ID, and then it's going to be saving the temperature that's measuring the Arduino. And you can analyze the data using different things. So that's an application using Arduino. And then for the Raspberry Pi, I had this small, like infrared motion sensor. So you can plug it up to the GPO of the Raspberry Pi. I was collecting the movements whenever it happens at the hall of my home. So I was collecting all these movements in there, and at the end I was able to analyze several months of data. And I found that it was easy to use Datadrop to monitorize this data through another location or whatever you want. You can even send images using the Raspberry Pi camera module to Datadrop. So you can be adding these photos there, and actually I showed how to make like a time lapse. I was using this nice flower to show that when I wasn't like watering it during like several days, and then it was like down. But then I just put some water and it get lives again. It's this one. So I just go through the way how to create the data bin, and then I just ran a scheduled task that was adding the images to this data bin. So at the end, I ended up with this animation. All the photos. Yeah. But I might say that it was not harm. It was, yeah. I mean, I was not poisoning it. I was just watering after. No, it's in the sense that it was like that, and then with the water, get alive again. Yeah. So that's the example, but you can do much more with Datadrop and the Raspberry Pi. So finally, and then I'm going to give you all these resources that are available. So I just so thank you very much for your attention.